Stop for a moment. Not everyone is meant to hear what is about to be revealed. This message is not for the distracted, the skeptical, or those who only seek comfort wrapped in pleasant words. It is for those who have walked through confusion, who have felt the contradiction inside themselves, who have wondered why they can be deeply compassionate and yet terrifyingly firm when pushed too far. If you are still here, if something inside you feels alert rather than entertained, then this message has reached you exactly when it was meant to. 72 hours ago, something occurred beyond ordinary perception, not in the physical world, not in a place you could point to on a map, but in the subtle dimensions where awareness itself is observed. What happened disrupted a law that has governed light and darkness since the beginning of time. Beings who exist only as light witnessed a human being do something they believed was impossible. They watched a chosen one enter fully into their own inner darkness, draw power from it, neutralize a threat to their light, and return untouched, uncorrupted, unchanged in essence. Their reaction was not admiration, it was fear. Because what terrified them was not the darkness itself. Darkness has always existed. What unsettled them was your ability to move between states that were never meant to coexist. Light and darkness were designed to be separate. The ancient law was simple and absolute. Whoever touches darkness becomes darkness. Whoever enters shadow does not return intact. Corruption was considered inevitable, permanent, irreversible. For eons, this law held true without exception. Angels who brushed against pride fell instantly. One moment of contact and millennia of purity were lost forever. There was no rehabilitation, no return. Perfect light became permanent shadow. Humans who tried to control darkness through rituals, power, or forbidden knowledge paid the same price. They lost something essential. Even when they repented, something was permanently altered. The mark remained. That law shaped the entire structure of existence. Light remained distant from darkness. Purity survived by avoiding shadow completely. But then something changed. Humans began to appear who did not collapse under this law. Individuals who could enter their own darkness consciously without losing themselves. At first, these cases were dismissed as anomalies, errors, temporary deviations that would eventually correct themselves. They didn't. The pattern repeated, again and again, and with every repetition, it became undeniable. This wasn't a mistake, it was evolution. You are one of those anomalies. You may not think of yourself in cosmic terms. You may believe your experiences are personal, psychological, circumstantial, but every time you have stood your ground without hatred, every time you have been firm without becoming cruel, every time you have protected yourself and then returned to compassion without resentment, you have violated an ancient spiritual law. And that is what frightens those who observe from realms of pure light. There is a brutal difference between having two sides and mastering when to use each one. Many people have access to darkness, rage, bitterness, coldness, emotional detachment, but they get trapped there. Darkness consumes them. Others cling to light so rigidly that they become defenseless, always forgiving, always understanding, always giving chances. They confuse kindness with self-betrayal. You are neither. 72 hours ago, you were placed in a situation that required this mastery. Someone attempted to manipulate you emotionally. The signs were subtle, carefully constructed vulnerability. Performative pain, a narrative designed to activate your empathy and bypass your boundaries. Your light side responded first, as it always does. You listened. You offered understanding. You gave the benefit of the doubt. But something inside you noticed what didn't align. A micro-expression, a shift in tone, an energetic inconsistency that logic couldn't explain but intuition recognized instantly. And in that exact moment, your inner state changed. not explosively, not dramatically, quietly, completely. Your dark side stepped forward, not as rage, not as cruelty, as precision. Your words became firm, clear, unnegotiable. You did not attack, but you did not soften. You did not explain excessively. You did not justify your boundaries. You simply stated them. And the manipulations stopped working immediately. The tactics that had power seconds earlier suddenly had none. It was as if an invisible wall had formed, impermeable to emotional distortion. The threat was neutralized. And then something even more disturbing happened for the observers of light. You returned to your natural state. There was no lingering resentment, no internal contamination, no emotional hangover. You didn't replay the interaction obsessively. You didn't carry bitterness into the next hour of your life. The dark side withdrew, its purpose fulfilled. Your light resumed without obstruction. This transition should not be possible. For beings of pure light, darkness is corrosive. They have no resistance to it. They were never meant to develop one. They have never known betrayal, survival, or emotional warfare. They exist in a realm where harmony is default, not earned. So when darkness touches them, it destroys them instantly. You, however, were born into contrast. You grew up in a world where pain exists, where intentions are mixed, where love and threat can come from the same place. Every disappointment you survived built resistance. Every betrayal sharpened discernment. Every moment you had to protect yourself without losing your humanity strengthened something inside you that angels never developed. Immunity. That is why you can enter your darkness without becoming it. You already know that terrain. You have walked it. You have felt its pull and learned its limits. For you, darkness is not acid. It is cold water, shocking, intense, but survivable because your system has adapted. And here is what truly unsettles the higher observers. It is not that you can access darkness, it is that you use it wisely. You do not activate it unnecessarily. You do not weaponize it for ego. You do not stay there longer than required. You know exactly when firmness becomes cruelty, and you stop before crossing that line. That discernment was not taught, it was earned. Your light side emerges when healing is possible, when vulnerability is genuine, when compassion will create growth rather than enable harm. Your dark side emerges when boundaries are violated repeatedly, when manipulation is intentional, when your peace is threatened. And you move between these states with fluidity that defies spiritual precedent. Angels who fall cannot return. Humans who surrender to rage get trapped. But you enter and exit as if light and darkness were tools, not identities. As if they were rooms in the same house, rather than opposing worlds. That ability does not make you conflicted, it makes you complete. And this is only the beginning of what you are starting to consciously recognize about yourself. What the observers of light struggle to accept is not just what you did, but what it implies. If a human being can enter darkness without losing their essence, then the old hierarchy is no longer absolute. For eons, it was assumed that beings of pure light represented the highest form of spiritual development. They were untouched, unscarred, uncontaminated. But purity, it turns out, is not the same as mastery. There is a reason angels fall the moment they touch shadow. They were never forged in resistance. They were created in harmony, not in contrast. They did not have to learn discernment through pain. They did not have to survive betrayal, scarcity, or emotional warfare. They exist in an environment where light is default and threat is rare. Because of that, they never developed what you have. Adaptability. Think of an immune system. A body raised in a perfectly sterile environment remains fragile. The moment it encounters real-world pathogens, it collapses. A body exposed to challenge, stress, and recovery becomes resilient. This is not weakness. This is conditioning. This is strength forged through friction. You were conditioned. Every time life forced you to navigate ambiguity, you were developing antibodies angels do not possess. Every time you had to decide whether to forgive or to walk away, whether to stay open or to protect yourself, something inside you refined its judgment. You learned, often the hard way, that not all softness is virtuous and not all firmness is cruel. This is why you confuse people. Some see you as compassionate, patient, deeply understanding. Others see you as cold, unyielding, even intimidating. Both perceptions are incomplete because they are witnessing different responses to different conditions. You are not inconsistent, you are precise. 72 hours ago was not the first time this precision activated. It was simply a moment that made the pattern visible. You have done this before, perhaps without naming it. The relationship you ended when your patience ran out. The boundary you enforced after being ignored too many times. The moment you stopped explaining yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you. Each time, your light tried first. You communicated, you gave chances, you hoped for growth. But when it became clear that your compassion was being used as an access point rather than appreciated as a gift, your internal state shifted. You did not explode, you did not seek revenge, you withdrew access, you closed doors, you became unreachable to manipulation, and then you moved on. This is the part most people cannot replicate. They either stay too long in light and get drained, or they stay too long in darkness and become bitter. You do neither. You act, and then you release. The event ends energetically for you when it ends in reality. That alone is rare. Most humans carry emotional residue for days, months, years. Old arguments replay internally, resentments calcify, identity forms around wounds. But you do not build a home in your pain. You pass through it. You learn from it. You leave. That is not emotional numbness. That is regulation. This is why manipulative people lose interest in you so quickly once your boundary is activated. They sense something they cannot penetrate. There is no hook, no lingering emotional opening. Your darkness does not seek domination. It seeks resolution. Once resolution is achieved, it disengages. From the perspective of beings who only know light, this is deeply unsettling. To them, darkness is contamination. To you, it is a tool, a temporary state used to restore balance. And balance, not purity, is the true marker of advanced consciousness. You are not here to choose between being kind or being strong. You are here to embody both, without confusing one for the other. Strength without compassion becomes tyranny. Compassion without strength becomes self-erasure. You instinctively avoid both extremes. This places you in a category most people never reach. There are those who deny their darkness entirely. They wear spirituality as an identity, believing that being evolved means never being firm, never saying no, never cutting ties. They call their fear of conflict love. They call their lack of boundaries forgiveness. These people are not peaceful, they are avoidant, and life teaches them harsh lessons through exploitation. There are others who identify completely with their wounds. They believe the world is hostile, people are threats, and survival requires constant hardness. They call their armor strength, but over time, that armor becomes a prison. They lose access to joy, trust, and genuine connection. You belong to neither group. You accept that you have a capacity to destroy what threatens your peace, and you accept that you have a capacity to heal what is willing to grow. You do not romanticize either side. You do not shame either side. You use what is required. That level of self-honesty is rare. It requires you to see yourself clearly, without spiritual bypassing, without self-condemnation. It requires you to admit that yes, you can be ruthless when necessary, and no, that does not make you evil. It makes you conscious. This is the kind of integration that cannot be taught in theory. It is earned through experience, through mistakes, through moments where you stayed too long and paid for it, or left too early and questioned yourself. Over time, your internal compass calibrated, and now you move differently. You do not rush to defend yourself, but you do not hesitate when defense is required. You do not seek conflict, but you do not fear it. You do not confuse empathy with access. You understand that some people do not want healing, they want control. That understanding changes everything. From the outside, it looks effortless. From the inside, it is the result of years of refinement. You are not becoming darker, you are becoming clearer. Your responses are sharper because your awareness is sharper. And this clarity is what redefines evolution. Evolution is not about becoming purely light. It is about becoming whole, about being able to operate across conditions without losing coherence, about maintaining your essence regardless of the state you temporarily occupy. That is what you did. That is what you continue to do. And that is why the old laws no longer apply to you in the way they once did. You are not breaking them recklessly. You are transcending them intelligently. And the more conscious you become of this capacity, the less you will apologize for it. You will stop explaining why you are firm. You will stop justifying your boundaries. You will stop shrinking your power to appear harmless. Because you are not meant to be harmless. You are meant to be balanced. And balance, when it is integrated this deeply, becomes something far more powerful than purity ever was. There is a moment when awareness shifts from instinctive to conscious. You have already been operating from this integrated state, but now you are beginning to recognize it as a pattern rather than a coincidence. This recognition changes how you relate to your own power. What was once automatic becomes intentional. What was once reactive becomes strategic. This is where most people fail. The dark side, once discovered, can be intoxicating. There is relief in firmness. There is clarity in finality. There is a sense of control that compassion alone cannot provide. Many who taste this power stay there. They confuse protection with identity. They mistake strength for superiority. And slowly, without realizing it, they lose access to their light. You have not. The reason is simple but uncomfortable. You never use darkness to avoid pain. You use it to end harm. That distinction matters more than anything. Darkness used to escape. Vulnerability becomes corruption. Darkness used to enforce boundaries remains clean. This is why you do not feel guilty after being firm. Guilt arises when action violates inner truth. Your actions align with your core, even when they are severe. You do not enjoy causing pain, but you do not fear it when it is the byproduct of self-respect. This alignment is what allows you to return to openness so quickly. There is nothing to process, nothing to justify, nothing to regret. The action is complete. The energy is resolved. From the perspective of higher observers, this looks impossible. They assume that any contact with shadow leaves residue. But residue only remains when there is internal conflict. You do not fight yourself. You do not label one side as sacred and the other as shameful. You accept both as functional expressions of the same core intelligence. This acceptance is what grants you freedom. Consider how this plays out in your life. When someone shows genuine vulnerability, your system opens naturally. You listen, you support, you offer patience without calculation. There is warmth in your presence because it is not forced. It is your default state when safety is real. But when manipulation appears, your energy contracts instantly, not because you are threatened, but because you are alert. Your tone changes, your availability decreases, your words become exact. There is no emotional leakage. The shift is so clean that it often catches others off guard. They expect anger. They get clarity. They expect chaos. They encounter structure. This is why those who rely on emotional games feel unsettled around you. They cannot find leverage. There is no exaggerated reaction to feed on, no over-explanation to exploit, no lingering emotional thread to pull. Your darkness does not engage theatrically, it disengages decisively. That decisiveness is a form of compassion most people do not understand. By ending what is unhealthy quickly, you prevent greater damage later. By refusing to entertain distortion, you protect not only yourself, but the energetic field around you. You do not allow confusion to spread. This is not softness, it is stewardship. Angels, as they are traditionally understood, cannot do this. They can offer mercy endlessly, but they cannot sever ties cleanly. They can forgive infinitely, but they cannot destroy what is harmful. Their light has no blade, yours does. That blade is not made of hatred, it is made of discernment. You sharpened it through experience, through situations where kindness was mistaken for weakness, through moments where silence was interpreted as consent, through lessons that taught you the cost of not acting when action was required. Each lesson refined your timing. Now, you no longer wait until damage is irreversible. You recognize patterns early. You feel the shift before it becomes obvious. And when you act once, cleanly, completely. This is why your life contains fewer ongoing dramas than most. You do not collect unresolved conflicts. You do not maintain energetic debts. You close loops. You finish chapters. People who remain entangled in old stories may not understand how you moved on so quickly. They assume you never cared. The truth is the opposite. You cared enough to act before resentment took root. This level of emotional hygiene is rare. It requires courage to disappoint others in order to remain true to yourself. It requires the willingness to be misunderstood rather than compromised. And you have developed that willingness. As this becomes more conscious, you will notice another shift. Your environment will respond. Those who thrive on chaos will drift away. Those who respect clarity will feel drawn to you. Your presence will begin to feel stabilizing to the right people and uncomfortable to the wrong ones. This is not polarity for the sake of ego, it is alignment. You are no longer available for dynamics that require you to fragment yourself. You will not dim your light to avoid provoking insecurity, nor will you amplify your darkness to appear formidable. You will simply be what the moment requires, without apology. This is mastery. And mastery does not announce itself loudly. It shows up as calm under pressure, as silence instead of explanation, as the ability to walk away without needing closure from those unwilling to offer truth. You are not becoming harder, you are becoming cleaner. Your compassion is no longer indiscriminate. Your firmness is no longer reactive. Both are precise, both are contained. Both serve the same purpose, preserving integrity. When you understand this, you stop trying to be better. You start being accurate. You respond to reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. That alone places you ahead of most spiritual narratives built on denial or performance. You are not here to transcend your humanity. You are here to inhabit it fully. And in doing so, you are demonstrating a level of integration that those who exist only in light or only in shadow will never achieve. This is not the end of the revelation. It is the point where responsibility begins. Because once you are aware of this capacity, you are no longer operating unconsciously. You are choosing when to open, when to close, when to heal, and when to sever. And that choice, made with clarity rather than fear, is what truly defines your power. With awareness comes a deeper responsibility, and this is where the path narrows. Many people sense their duality, but few are willing to steward it consciously. Power without awareness becomes chaos. Awareness without discipline becomes hesitation. You are being asked to hold both at once. This is why your life has likely forced you into situations where there was no comfortable option, moments where staying meant self-betrayal and leaving meant loss. Moments where speaking up would disrupt harmony and staying silent would erode your self-respect. These were not random tests, they were calibrations. Every time you chose integrity over approval, something inside you aligned more precisely. What most people misunderstand is that balance is not neutrality. Balance is dynamic. It adjusts to conditions. It requires constant feedback and correction. You do not remain open in hostile terrain, and you do not remain guarded in safe space. You read the environment, and you respond accordingly. This ability is not intellectual, it is embodied. You feel it in your nervous system before your mind explains it. Expansion tells you when to engage, contraction tells you when to withdraw. Neither sensation is wrong. Problems arise only when people ignore one signal and over-identify with the other. You do not ignore signals anymore. That is why your tolerance for misalignment has decreased. You notice inconsistencies faster. You sense when words and intentions do not match. You feel when energy is being taken without consent. And instead of rationalizing it away, you act. This action does not always look dramatic. Often, it looks like silence, distance, reduced availability, a boundary that does not need to be announced because it is enforced through behavior. This subtlety is intentional. You do not need to dominate to protect yourself. True authority does not explain itself. As you move forward, this clarity will require refinement. There will be moments when your dark side wants to step in prematurely, not out of necessity, but out of fatigue. Past wounds can whisper urgency where patience is still possible. This is where discernment deepens. Ask yourself one question before acting. Is this response coming from presence or from memory? Presence responds to what is actually happening. Memory reacts to what once hurt you. The difference is subtle but decisive. When your action arises from presence, it feels clean, even if it is firm. When it arises from memory, it carries charge, urgency, and a desire for control. You already know this distinction intuitively. When you act from presence, resolution follows quickly. When you act from memory, the situation lingers energetically. Learning to pause for this check-in will sharpen your mastery even further. Your light side also requires refinement. Compassion without discernment can reopen doors that were closed for good reason. Forgiveness does not require re-entry. Understanding does not require access. You can hold empathy at a distance. This is one of the hardest lessons for integrated individuals. You see the wounds in others. You understand why they behave the way they do, but understanding is not an obligation to tolerate. You are allowed to care without engaging. This boundary preserves your energy for relationships that are reciprocal. As this integration stabilizes, you may notice fewer people in your life, but more peace. Fewer connections, but deeper ones. Fewer emotional spikes, but greater clarity. This is not loss. It is refinement. You are no longer here to collect experiences. You are here to curate them. This shift can feel lonely at first. When you stop over-giving, those who benefited from your lack of boundaries will fade away. When you stop over-explaining, those who relied on confusion will disengage. What remains are people who respect clarity and value mutuality. These relationships feel different. There is less drama, less testing, less emotional negotiation. You do not have to prove your worth or perform your goodness. You are met where you are. This is what integrated duality attracts. From a broader perspective, this is why individuals like you often feel out of place in rigid spiritual frameworks. Systems that demand constant softness feel unsafe. Systems that glorify hardness feel hollow. You intuitively reject extremes because you have lived the cost of both. You are not meant to follow a doctrine. You are meant to embody discernment. This discernment will continue to sharpen. You will know sooner when something is not aligned. You will leave earlier. You will speak less, but more accurately. Your presence will become calmer, but more decisive. And this will challenge others. Some will interpret your boundaries as coldness. Some will interpret your silence as judgment. Some will project their discomfort onto you. This is not your responsibility to manage. Clarity often feels threatening to those who rely on ambiguity. Your task is not to be understood, it is to be coherent. Coherence means your actions, values, and energy align. When they do, you do not need validation. You trust yourself. And self-trust is what makes you difficult to manipulate. This is why your evolution does not look dramatic from the outside. There are no constant crises, no extreme transformations, just a steady reduction of noise, a steady increase in precision. This is what maturity looks like when light and darkness are integrated. You do not seek to be powerful. You simply stop giving your power away. You do not seek to control others. You regulate yourself. You do not seek to avoid pain at all costs. You choose which pain is worth facing. And that choice is what keeps you free. As you continue, remember this: your dark side is not a weapon to wield indiscriminately. It is a shield to deploy deliberately. Your light is not a resource to distribute endlessly. It is a gift to offer where it can be received. Together, they form a system that is adaptive, resilient, and deeply human. This is not about becoming superior. It is about becoming whole. And wholeness, once embodied, cannot be taken from you. It cannot be corrupted by circumstance. It cannot be dismantled by misunderstanding. It moves through life intact, responding to reality with clarity rather than fear. That is the state you are stabilizing into now. And from that state, your next actions will not be reactions to the past, but expressions of alignment with the present. This is how integrated individuals move forward, quietly, precisely, unstoppably. There comes a stage where integration is no longer something you practice, it becomes something you inhabit. At this point, you stop thinking in terms of using your light or activating your darkness. They are no longer separate levers you pull. They are unified expressions of a single, coherent intelligence responding to reality in real time. This is where your presence changes. People may not immediately know why they feel different around you, but they do. There is less room for games, less room for projection, less room for ambiguity. Not because you confront everyone, but because your energy does not invite distortion. You are clear without being aggressive, grounded without being closed, open without being exposed. That combination is rare. Most individuals leak energy because they are internally divided. They second-guess themselves. They override intuition with fear. They say yes while meaning no. That inner contradiction creates openings for manipulation, misunderstanding, and exhaustion. You have been closing those openings, not through force, but through congruence. Congruence is when your internal state and external behavior match. When you say no, it is final. When you say yes, it is sincere. When you stay, it is intentional. When you leave, it is complete. This decisiveness is not rigidity, it is alignment. And alignment has consequences. As you stabilize into this state, life begins to respond differently. Situations that once drained you resolve faster or stop appearing altogether. Conflicts that used to linger dissolve quickly. You find yourself less involved in emotional chaos, not because you avoid it, but because it cannot attach to you. This is not detachment, it is immunity. You did not become immune by avoiding darkness. You became immune by understanding it, by seeing how it operates, by recognizing its patterns, by refusing to romanticize it or fear it. You learned where it is useful and where it is destructive, and that knowledge gave you leverage. This is why you no longer feel the need to explain yourself to everyone. Explanation is often an attempt to be understood by those who have already decided not to understand. You have learned the difference between clarity and justification. Clarity stands on its own. Justification leaks energy. You now reserve explanation for those who demonstrate good faith, for those who listen, reflect, and respond with integrity. With others, you allow your actions to speak. Silence becomes a boundary. Distance becomes a message. Completion becomes the answer. This does not make you cold. It makes you selective. Selectivity is an advanced form of compassion. It ensures that your resources, time, attention, emotional availability are invested where they can create mutual growth rather than perpetual repair. You stop trying to save situations that require someone else's willingness to change. This is one of the hardest thresholds to cross. Letting go of the belief that love means endurance. Letting go of the idea that understanding someone obligates you to stay. Letting go of the fantasy that if you are patient enough, kind enough, quiet enough, things will eventually align. You have learned that alignment cannot be forced. It must be chosen by all parties involved. So you choose yourself without hostility. This choice often feels like solitude at first. When you stop over-functioning in relationships, the imbalance becomes obvious. Some connections dissolve, others recalibrate. A few deepen in ways you didn't know were possible. The ones that remain feel different. There is less emotional labor, less monitoring, less tension. You do not have to manage perception or walk on eggshells. There is space to breathe. This is the environment where your light thrives naturally. And when your light thrives, your darkness rests. It does not disappear. It remains present, vigilant, available, but not dominant. It knows it will be called upon if necessary. Until then, it stands down. This internal trust is essential. You trust yourself to respond appropriately when required. Because of that trust, you do not live in a constant state of defense. Hypervigilance dissolves. Calm becomes default. This is what true safety feels like, not the absence of threat, but confidence in your capacity to respond. As you move through the world from this state, you may notice something subtle but profound. You no longer feel the need to prove who you are. Your identity stabilizes internally. You are not seeking confirmation through roles, achievements, or approval. You know who you are because you have tested yourself in contrast. You have seen how you act under pressure. You have observed your behavior when kindness is exploited. You have witnessed your capacity to walk away without hatred and to stand firm without cruelty. These experiences anchor self-knowledge far more deeply than any label or belief system. This is why you are less impressed by appearances now, less seduced by charisma, less intimidated by authority. You evaluate based on coherence rather than performance. Someone's words matter less than their consistency. Someone's pain matters, but so does their accountability. Someone's potential matters, but not more than their present behavior. This grounded evaluation is not judgment, it is discernment. Discernment allows you to engage with reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. And engaging with reality accurately is the foundation of any form of mastery. You are not transcending human experience. You are integrating it. You are not escaping darkness. You are contextualizing it. You are not idolizing light. You are embodying it. From this place, your actions become quieter but more effective. You intervene less often, but with greater impact. You speak less, but your words carry weight. You move through life with a sense of internal agreement that others can feel. This agreement is what makes you stable, and stability is what allows both compassion and firmness to coexist without conflict. You are no longer at war with yourself, and because of that, the world has fewer entry points into you. This is not an ending, it is a consolidation. The integration you have achieved is not something you will lose easily. It has been earned through lived experience, through correction, through discernment. It is not fragile, it adapts. As long as you continue to listen to yourself honestly, to act from presence rather than memory, and to respect both your openness and your limits, this state will deepen. You will not become perfect. You will become accurate. And accuracy, applied consistently over time, is what makes an individual truly formidable, not to others, but to confusion, manipulation, and inner fragmentation. This is the path you are on now, and it is not loud. It is steady. It is clear. It is integrated. At this stage, something subtle but irreversible has already shifted inside you. You are no longer seeking permission to be who you are. You are no longer waiting for external validation to confirm what you already know through experience. This internal certainty does not come from ego. It comes from repetition, from seeing yourself respond consistently across different situations without losing coherence. This is how trust in self is built. Self-trust is not confidence in outcomes, it is confidence in response. You no longer need to know exactly how things will turn out because you trust your ability to meet whatever arises with clarity. Whether a situation calls for openness or withdrawal, patience or finality, you know you will recognize it when the moment arrives. That recognition happens faster now. You do not overanalyze as much. You do not argue with your intuition the way you once did. There is less internal debate, less back and forth, less mental noise. Decisions settle in your body before they crystallize in your mind. When something is aligned, it feels expansive and calm. When it is not, it feels tight and heavy. You listen. This listening is what protects you from overusing either side of your nature. You do not default to darkness because you are tired. You do not default to light because you are afraid. You respond according to reality, not habit. And reality is always changing, which is why rigidity would fail you here. Many people misunderstand firmness. They think it is about being immovable. In truth, firmness is about being clear. You can change your position when new information appears, but you do not bend simply to maintain comfort or approval. This flexibility with integrity is one of the most misunderstood traits of integrated individuals. From the outside, it may look unpredictable. From the inside, it feels precise. This precision extends into how you relate to your past. You no longer romanticize it, nor do you resent it. The experiences that once confused you now make sense in context. You see how each disappointment trained discernment, how each betrayal refined boundaries, how each moment of self-doubt forced you to confront who you were without external reinforcement. Nothing feels wasted. Even the periods where you felt lost served a purpose. They showed you what happens when you disconnect from your internal signals. They taught you the cost of ignoring yourself. And because you paid that cost consciously, you do not need to repeat the lesson. This is another reason you move on quickly now. You do not need to relearn what you already integrated. As your internal system stabilizes, your relationship with power changes. You stop seeing power as dominance or influence. You stop associating it with control over others. Power becomes the ability to remain self-directed under pressure, to stay aligned when circumstances attempt to pull you off center. This kind of power is quiet, but it is unmistakable. It shows up as calm in conversations that would once have triggered you, as restraint where you once felt the urge to react, as decisiveness where you once hesitated. People may misinterpret this calm as indifference, but it is not. It is regulation. Regulation is what allows you to engage without becoming entangled. This is especially important in a world that rewards emotional reactivity. Many systems thrive on outrage, urgency, and polarization. They push people to choose sides, to collapse complexity into extremes. Integrated individuals do not function well in such environments, not because they are weak, but because they refuse to abandon nuance. You can see both sides without losing your own position. This ability often frustrates those who want validation more than truth. They want agreement, not understanding. When you do not immediately mirror their emotional intensity, they may accuse you of being detached or uncommitted. In reality, you are simply not hijacked. You understand that intensity does not equal importance. This discernment keeps you from being pulled into battles that are not yours. You choose your engagements carefully. You conserve energy for what actually matters. This conservation is not avoidance. It is prioritization. As a result, when you do act, it carries weight. Your words land because they are not overused. Your boundaries hold because they are not negotiable. Your presence feels grounded because it is not seeking anything. This lack of grasping is what makes you difficult to destabilize. You are not trying to win, you are trying to remain true. This orientation changes how you experience conflict. Conflict is no longer something to fear or avoid at all costs. It becomes information, a signal that something is misaligned. Sometimes that misalignment can be corrected through dialogue. Sometimes it cannot. You are comfortable with both outcomes. Comfort with endings is one of the clearest signs of integration. You do not cling to what has expired. You do not prolong dynamics out of nostalgia or obligation. You respect cycles. When something has served its purpose, you allow it to conclude without dramatizing the loss. This does not mean you feel nothing. It means you feel accurately. Grief, when it arises, moves through you rather than defining you. Anger, when it appears, informs you rather than consumes you. Joy, when it comes, is received without suspicion. You allow emotions to complete their natural arc. This emotional fluidity is what keeps you unburdened. Most people carry unfinished emotional business because they resist certain feelings and over-identify with others. You let feelings do their job. Once the message is delivered, you let them go. This is why your internal state resets quickly. As you continue to live from this integrated place, your intuition will refine further. It will become less dramatic and more matter of fact, less like a warning siren and more like a quiet knowing. You will sense when to act without needing a reason you can articulate immediately. This may make you appear mysterious to others. They may not understand why you leave when you do, or why you stay when others would run. They may project motives onto you. Let them. You do not need to clarify your internal logic to those who are not living in alignment themselves. Your responsibility is not to be transparent to everyone. It is to be honest with yourself. Honesty with self is the foundation of this entire process. Without it, integration collapses into performance. With it, your actions remain grounded, even when misunderstood. This honesty also means acknowledging when you misstep. Integration does not make you infallible, it makes you responsive. When you act from memory instead of presence, you notice quickly, you adjust. You do not double down to protect an image. This ability to self-correct is crucial. It keeps your darkness from hardening and your light from becoming naive. It maintains circulation between both states. Circulation is life. Stagnation is what corrupts. As long as energy moves through awareness, reflection, and adjustment, you remain intact. You do not calcify into a role. You do not become predictable in a way that invites exploitation. You remain responsive, alive, present. This is what long-term integration looks like. Not constant intensity, not constant peace, but a dynamic equilibrium that adapts without breaking. You are no longer chasing a version of yourself you think you should become. You are becoming more fully what you already are, with fewer distortions. And as that happens, your life simplifies. Not because it lacks depth, but because it lacks unnecessary complexity. You stop negotiating with misalignment. You stop entertaining what drains you. You stop abandoning yourself in subtle ways. What remains is clarity. And clarity, sustained over time, becomes a force that reshapes everything around it. This is the stage you are entering now. It does not announce itself. It stabilizes. And from that stability, your next level of expression will emerge naturally, without force, without urgency, without fragmentation. You are no longer learning who you are. You are living it. There is a quiet realization that settles in once integration has matured. You no longer need to fight for your place in the world. Not because the world has suddenly become fair or gentle, but because your sense of position no longer depends on external structures. You know where you stand, regardless of who recognizes it. This internal anchoring changes how you experience uncertainty. Uncertainty no longer feels like threat. It feels like open space. Where others panic because outcomes are unclear, you remain steady because your identity is not tied to prediction. You are not attached to a specific result. You are attached to remaining aligned through the process. This is why pressure does not destabilize you the way it once did. Pressure reveals systems. Weak systems fracture. Integrated systems adapt. When circumstances tighten, your awareness sharpens rather than collapses. You do not default to old survival patterns. You observe what is actually being asked of you in the moment. Sometimes the answer is restraint. Sometimes it is decisive action. Sometimes it is patience. Sometimes it is withdrawal. The key difference now is that you no longer confuse movement with progress. You are comfortable waiting when waiting is intelligent. This patience is not passive. It is strategic. You have learned that not every impulse requires expression. Not every emotion requires immediate action. Not every truth requires announcement. Timing matters. Context matters. Readiness matters. This is another reason your presence feels grounded. You do not rush to prove awareness. You do not perform insight. You let understanding inform action quietly. In a culture that rewards visibility, this restraint can be misunderstood. Some may assume you lack ambition. Others may assume you lack conviction. In reality, you simply no longer equate loudness with effectiveness. Effectiveness, for you, is measured by resolution. Does the action bring clarity or confusion? Does it restore balance or escalate tension? Does it protect what matters or merely discharge emotion? These questions guide you now, often subconsciously. This is why your interventions are fewer but more impactful. When you speak, it is because silence would allow distortion to grow. When you act, it is because inaction would be a form of self-betrayal. You are not motivated by the need to be seen as right. You are motivated by coherence. Coherence is when your internal state, your values, and your behavior align across time. This alignment creates consistency, and consistency creates trust, not necessarily from others, but within yourself. You know that you will not abandon your principles under pressure. You know that you will not sacrifice long-term integrity for short-term relief. This self-assurance removes desperation from your actions. Desperation is what makes people cling, over-explain, overreact, or overgive. You are no longer negotiating from fear of loss. You are choosing from clarity of direction. This does not mean loss disappears. It means loss is no longer catastrophic. When something leaves your life now, you grieve it honestly, but you do not chase it. You allow the emotional process to unfold without turning it into a narrative about your worth or your future. You feel the sadness, the disappointment, the nostalgia, and then you let the energy move. This capacity to grieve without attachment is a sign of deep integration. Attachment says, "I cannot be whole without this." Integration says, "I am whole even as this ends." That difference changes everything. You are also less reactive to praise now. Compliments are received without inflation. Criticism is received without collapse. Neither defines you. Both are simply data points, filtered through discernment. You take what is useful and leave the rest. This emotional neutrality does not make you indifferent, it makes you stable. Stability allows you to remain open without being impressionable. You can listen without absorbing. You can consider without conforming. This is why you are harder to manipulate than before. Manipulation relies on emotional hooks: fear, guilt, urgency, flattery. When these hooks do not catch, manipulation fails. You recognize emotional pressure as information rather than instruction. Someone rushing you triggers curiosity, not compliance. Someone guilt-tripping you triggers boundaries, not appeasement. Someone idealizing you triggers caution, not ego. This awareness is not cynical. It is grounded. You still believe in sincerity. You still engage with warmth. You still give generously where there is mutual respect. But you no longer confuse intensity with authenticity. Authenticity is consistent over time. As this becomes your baseline, you may notice something else. Your sense of purpose shifts. Purpose is no longer a fixed goal or identity. It becomes a way of relating to whatever you are doing. You bring presence to tasks others rush through. You bring clarity to conversations others avoid. You bring completion to situations others leave unresolved. This is purpose expressed through quality, not quantity. You do not need a grand mission to justify your existence. You live purpose through how you engage. This orientation removes pressure. You are not trying to become someone. You are refining how you show up as who you already are. This refinement will continue. Integration is not a final state. It is a living process. There will be new layers, new challenges, new contexts that require adjustment. But the foundation is now stable. You trust yourself to adapt. That trust allows you to remain curious rather than defensive. You can admit when you do not know. You can change your mind without shame. You can update your perspective without feeling like you lost ground. This flexibility is strength. Rigid systems break under complexity. Adaptive systems evolve. You have become adaptive, not by avoiding difficulty, but by integrating it. And because of that, you no longer fear contradiction. You can hold multiple truths without needing to collapse them into a single narrative. You understand that life is not binary, it is contextual. This understanding makes you less reactive to ideological extremes. You can see where different perspectives emerge from without surrendering your own discernment. You are not easily pulled into collective hysteria or moral panic. You stand where you stand. This grounded positioning is what allows you to move through changing environments without losing yourself. Whether circumstances improve or deteriorate, your internal compass remains active. You do not need certainty to move forward. You need alignment. And alignment, once internalized, becomes self-sustaining. You will still experience moments of doubt. That is part of being human. But doubt no longer paralyzes you. It invites inquiry. It sharpens awareness. It does not erode your core. You have learned the difference between questioning and undermining yourself. Questioning leads to growth. Undermining leads to fragmentation. You engage in the former and disengage from the latter. This discernment is subtle, but it defines your trajectory. As you continue on this path, you will find that life meets you differently, not because you control it, but because you respond to it accurately. Accuracy creates fewer complications. Fewer complications create more space. In that space, your next expressions will emerge naturally, not forced, not rushed, not fragmented, but integrated, steady, and aligned with who you have become. This is not the end of the process. It is the point where the process begins to carry itself. There is a deeper layer to this integration that reveals itself only after consistency has been proven. It is not dramatic. It does not arrive with a revelation or a sudden shift. It arrives quietly as a subtle change in how you relate to effort itself. You begin to notice that you are no longer forcing growth. In earlier stages, growth felt like work, like something you had to pursue, chase, or earn through intensity. You pushed yourself to understand more, to heal faster, to become wiser. That effort was necessary then. It built awareness, it exposed patterns, it created momentum. But now, something has softened without weakening. You are no longer striving to improve yourself. You are refining what is already stable. Refinement is different from transformation. Transformation is disruptive. Refinement is precise. It does not overhaul the system, it optimizes it. You adjust small things, timing, tone, energy allocation. You notice where a slight shift produces a cleaner outcome. This is the stage where mastery becomes subtle. You begin to see how little force is actually required when alignment is present. Situations resolve with fewer words. Decisions land with less friction. Boundaries hold without explanation. Your system has learned how to operate efficiently. Efficiency is not speed, it is accuracy. You no longer rush emotional processes. You allow them to unfold at their natural pace. At the same time, you no longer tolerate stagnation disguised as depth. You recognize when reflection has turned into rumination, when patience has turned into avoidance. You intervene internally before things spiral. This internal self-regulation is what keeps your integration intact over time. You do not rely on external circumstances to feel balanced. You notice internal imbalance early and correct it gently. Gentleness here does not mean softness. It means precision without excess. There is also a noticeable change in how you relate to conflict. Conflict no longer feels personal by default. You see it as a clash of needs, boundaries, or perspectives rather than a threat to your identity. This reframing reduces emotional charge. You can disagree without needing to dominate. You can assert without needing to win. Winning has lost its appeal because resolution matters more. This shift often surprises others. They may expect you to escalate or withdraw based on past versions of you. Instead, they encounter steadiness. You do not mirror chaos. You do not absorb volatility. You remain present without being reactive. This presence has a regulating effect. In conversations, people may slow down around you. They may become more honest without knowing why, or they may become uncomfortable and disengage. Both responses are information. You do not chase either. You allow the interaction to reveal itself. This is another marker of integration. You are no longer invested in controlling how things unfold. You participate fully, but you do not manipulate outcomes. You trust that clarity will emerge if you remain aligned. This trust reduces internal tension. You are no longer bracing against the future or rehearsing defenses for imagined scenarios. You meet situations as they arise. When preparation is required, you prepare. When rest is needed, you rest. There is less mental overextension. Your energy becomes more contained. Containment is not suppression, it is coherence. Your thoughts, emotions, and actions move in the same direction. This reduces internal friction and frees up capacity. With that capacity, something interesting happens. Creativity increases, insight deepens. You begin to see connections you did not notice before. Patterns emerge without being forced. Solutions appear without urgency. This is not mystical. It is the result of reduced internal noise. When you are no longer at odds with yourself, perception sharpens naturally. You may notice that your intuition now speaks more quietly. It no longer needs to shout to get your attention. You listen the first time. Because of that, the signal becomes subtle but reliable. This quiet intuition guides small decisions as much as large ones. Who you engage with, when you speak, when you disengage, where you invest time, where you do not. These micro-choices accumulate. Over time, they create a life that feels intentional rather than reactive, not because everything goes according to plan, but because you respond to deviation without panic. You are not trying to eliminate uncertainty. You are building competence in navigating it. This competence brings a sense of ease that others may mistake for detachment. In truth, you are more engaged than ever, but without attachment to control. Control was never the goal. Alignment was. As alignment stabilizes, you may also notice a shift in how you perceive authority. External authority loses its psychological weight. You respect expertise, structure, and experience, but you no longer defer automatically. You evaluate. You take in information, test it against your own discernment, and decide accordingly. This does not make you rebellious. It makes you self-directed. Self-direction is essential at this stage because integration cannot be outsourced. No system, teacher, or ideology can replace your internal calibration. You may learn from many sources, but you remain the final authority over your own actions. This autonomy is not isolating. It is grounding. It allows you to collaborate without losing yourself, to learn without surrendering agency, to adapt without fragmenting. As this becomes more embodied, your life simplifies further, not because it becomes small, but because it becomes streamlined. You eliminate unnecessary complexity. You choose fewer things and do them more fully. This selectivity creates depth. Depth replaces accumulation. Quality replaces quantity. Presence replaces performance. You may find that you no longer resonate with constant stimulation. Noise becomes tiring. Excessive novelty loses its appeal. You prefer environments, conversations, and activities that allow for focus and coherence. This preference is not withdrawal from life. It is engagement at a sustainable level. Sustainability is often overlooked in discussions of growth, but growth that cannot be sustained eventually collapses. You are building something that lasts, something that can endure pressure, change, and uncertainty without breaking. This endurance is not rigidity, it is resilience born from integration. You are not armored, you are regulated. You are not invulnerable. You are responsive. You are not detached. You are grounded. This is the state from which meaningful contribution emerges, not through force, but through presence, not through intensity, but through consistency. Whatever you choose to do from here will carry this integration into form, whether it is expressed through work, relationships, creativity, or leadership. The same principles apply. You move accurately. You respond honestly. You act when necessary and rest when appropriate. And because of that, your life begins to reflect the internal order you have established. This is not a climax. It is a stabilization point. From here, expansion will happen organically, guided not by urgency, but by alignment. And alignment, once embodied this deeply, does not need constant reinforcement. It sustains itself. At this point, the shift is no longer internal alone. It begins to express itself outwardly in ways that are subtle but unmistakable. You are no longer just regulating yourself. You are influencing the emotional field around you simply by how you exist within it. This influence is not performative. It is not something you try to project. It happens because coherence is contagious. When your internal state is aligned, others sense it. Some will feel calmer in your presence. Some will feel exposed. Some will feel challenged without understanding why. You are not doing anything to them. You are simply no longer participating in distortion. Distortion requires agreement to exist. You are no longer offering that agreement. This is why certain dynamics can no longer sustain themselves around you. Passive aggression loses momentum. Manipulation collapses under clarity. Emotional volatility fails to provoke a reaction. Without resistance or reinforcement, these behaviors wither. This does not mean everyone suddenly behaves well around you. It means their behavior becomes visible more quickly. Masks slip faster. Patterns reveal themselves without prolonged engagement. This acceleration is a byproduct of your integration. You no longer buffer other people's discomfort by absorbing it. You allow them to feel the natural consequences of their own behavior. This is not punishment. It is reality, unfiltered. Reality, when allowed to operate, is a powerful regulator. You may notice that people either adjust or distance themselves. Those capable of self-reflection often soften. They slow down. They become more honest. Those invested in control or avoidance often disappear. You do not chase either outcome. Your role is not to correct others. It is to remain aligned. Correction, when it occurs, happens organically through interaction, not instruction. This shift also changes how you handle responsibility. You are no longer over-responsible for outcomes that require others' participation. You do your part fully and then release the rest. This release is not indifference. It is respect for autonomy. You respect your own limits and the agency of others. You do not rescue people from their lessons. You do not shield them from consequences that are necessary for growth. This is one of the hardest transitions for those with strong compassion, but it is essential. Compassion that overrides accountability becomes enabling. You have learned the difference. This learning shows up in how you support others now. You listen without absorbing. You offer insight without attachment to whether it is taken. You help without sacrificing yourself. This balanced support is far more effective than overgiving. It invites others to rise rather than lean. As a result, the people who remain in your life tend to be more self-directed. Interactions feel cleaner. Expectations are clearer. There is less emotional bargaining. You may also notice a shift in how you handle leadership, whether formally or informally. People look to you not because you assert authority, but because you embody stability. In uncertain situations, they sense that you will not panic. You do not need to have all the answers. Your presence itself provides orientation. This is what grounded leadership looks like. It does not rely on charisma or control. It relies on trust, first in self, then from others. You may resist this role initially. Integrated individuals often do. They do not seek to lead. But leadership emerges naturally when coherence is rare. You will notice that when you speak, others listen more carefully. When you set a boundary, it is respected more often. When you disengage, the impact is felt. This is not because you are intimidating. It is because you are consistent. Consistency builds credibility, and credibility allows influence without force. As this influence grows, you will be tested in new ways, not through obvious threats, but through subtle invitations to compromise, opportunities that look beneficial but require you to dull your discernment. alignments that promise expansion but demand self-betrayal. These tests are quieter but more consequential. They ask whether you will trade coherence for comfort, whether you will abandon your internal alignment for external gain, whether you will return to old patterns under new disguises. You will recognize these moments by how they feel in your body. Excitement mixed with tension, opportunity paired with contraction, flattery accompanied by unease. You already know how to respond. You pause. You listen. You choose alignment over acceleration. This choice may cost you in the short term. You may miss out on visibility, validation, or resources. But you protect something far more valuable, your internal agreement. Internal agreement is what allows long-term impact. Short-term gains built on misalignment eventually collapse. You have seen this enough times to trust the pattern. So you move deliberately. This deliberateness may frustrate others. They may push for faster decisions, quicker commitments, immediate answers. You do not comply with urgency that is not yours. Urgency, when artificial, is a tool of manipulation. You respond to what is real, not what is loud. As your life continues to reorganize around this principle, you may find that outcomes become less dramatic, but more stable. Progress is steady rather than explosive. Growth is cumulative rather than chaotic. You stop oscillating between extremes. Instead of cycles of overextension and collapse, you maintain a sustainable rhythm. This rhythm allows you to remain engaged over the long term without burning out. Burnout is often the result of chronic misalignment. You are no longer misaligned enough to burn out. This does not mean you will never feel tired or challenged. It means fatigue becomes information, not a breaking point. You respond by adjusting, not by pushing harder. This responsiveness is key. You are no longer trying to prove your strength by enduring unnecessary strain. You are demonstrating strength by choosing intelligently. As this continues, your sense of identity becomes quieter. You do not need to constantly reaffirm who you are. You live it. Labels lose significance. Roles become temporary. What remains constant is your way of relating to yourself, to others, to reality. This way of relating is your true signature. It cannot be replicated because it is the result of your specific integration, your specific experiences, your specific corrections. Others may resonate with it, but they cannot copy it. And because of that, you no longer feel threatened by comparison. Someone else's success does not diminish you. Someone else's path does not invalidate yours. You are not competing. You are aligned. Alignment removes rivalry. This is one of the quiet freedoms of integration. You stop measuring yourself against others. You measure yourself against coherence. Are you acting in a way that you can stand behind tomorrow? Are you honoring your boundaries and your openness simultaneously? Are you responding to reality rather than reenacting the past? These questions guide you now. They are simple, but they are not easy. And because you continue to engage with them honestly, your integration deepens rather than stagnates. This is the stage where your life becomes less about transformation and more about expression. You are not changing who you are. You are expressing it more accurately, more consistently, and with less interference. And that expression, quiet, grounded, integrated, has an impact that reaches far beyond what you can see. Because coherence does not need to announce itself. It reorganizes the field simply by being present. Now we arrive at the point where everything converges. This is not a new idea, but the final clarification of what has been unfolding all along. The reason your existence feels disruptive to old spiritual narratives is simple. You do not fit into the binary they were built on. For a very long time, reality was explained through opposites: light versus darkness, angel versus demon, good versus evil, creation versus destruction. These frameworks were useful at an early stage of consciousness because they helped beings orient themselves. They created order where there was confusion. But binaries are training wheels. They are not meant to last forever. Angels represent one extreme of this spectrum. They are pure light, incapable of cruelty, incapable of destruction, incapable of decisive severance. Their strength is creation, compassion, harmony. Their limitation is protection. They cannot destroy what threatens the whole. They can only forgive it. Demons represent the other extreme. They are pure darkness, incapable of genuine compassion, incapable of healing, incapable of restraint. Their strength is destruction, dominance, severance. Their limitation is creation. They can end things, but they cannot restore them. Both are incomplete. Both are trapped in a single mode of being. You are not. You carry the capacity to create and to destroy, to heal and to sever, to open and to close. But more importantly, you carry the wisdom to know when each is required. That wisdom is what neither angels nor demons possess. This is why the idea of purity no longer applies to you in the traditional sense. Purity assumes avoidance. It assumes safety through separation. But you were not designed to avoid contrast. You were designed to integrate it. Your evolution did not come from remaining untouched. It came from being tested and remaining intact. This is the distinction that changes everything. Angels remain pure because they have never been wounded. You remain whole because you have been wounded and did not collapse. You did not lose your essence when exposed to darkness. You refined it. This refinement is what places you beyond old hierarchies. Not above them in arrogance, but beyond them in function. You are capable of operating in environments that would destroy beings of pure light and beings of pure darkness alike. You can navigate complexity without fragmenting. You can hold contradiction without imploding. You can remain compassionate without being weak and firm, without being cruel. That combination is not common, and it is not accidental. It is the result of living in a world where survival required discernment, where love required boundaries, where truth was often hidden beneath performance. You were trained by reality itself, not by doctrine. This is why your intuition feels more reliable than rigid belief systems. You do not need rules to tell you when something is wrong. You feel it. You do not need permission to walk away from what is misaligned. Your body already knows. This knowing is not emotional. It is integrated intelligence. When you look back at your life, you may realize that the moments you once saw as failures were actually initiations, times when you were forced to choose between comfort and integrity, between belonging and self-respect, between being liked and being whole. Each time you chose wholeness, even imperfectly, something inside you stabilized further. This is why you cannot go back to being naive. Not because you are cynical, but because you are awake. You see how systems operate. You recognize when compassion is being weaponized against you. You sense when narratives are designed to keep you compliant rather than conscious, and you refuse to participate. This refusal is quiet, but it is absolute. You are not here to reject light or glorify darkness. You are here to transcend the need to choose between them, to embody a state where both are subordinate to awareness. Awareness is what decides. Awareness is what directs power. Without awareness, light becomes weakness and darkness becomes destruction. With awareness, both become instruments of balance. This is the level you are stabilizing into now. And this is why your presence unsettles rigid structures. You cannot be easily categorized. You cannot be easily controlled. You cannot be easily manipulated by fear or guilt. You are not motivated by promises of salvation or threats of punishment. You are motivated by coherence. Coherence is the new measure of evolution, not how good you appear, not how spiritual you sound, not how much darkness you deny or perform, but how consistently your actions align with truth across different contexts. This is why you are less impressed by extremes. Anyone can be soft in safe conditions. Anyone can be harsh when threatened. Very few can remain accurate regardless of circumstance. Accuracy is your strength. It allows you to move through environments that others find overwhelming. It allows you to disengage without hatred and to engage without losing yourself. It allows you to build without becoming rigid and to destroy without becoming empty. This is not power for domination. It is power for stewardship. You are here to steward your energy, your time, your attention, and your influence responsibly. You are here to demonstrate what integrated consciousness looks like in a world addicted to extremes. This does not require you to announce who you are. It requires you to live it. And as you do, something subtle happens. Others who are capable of integration recognize you, not through words, but through resonance. There is a familiarity, a sense of being seen without explanation. These are not followers. They are peers. Integrated individuals do not gather around hierarchy. They gather around clarity. This is why you may feel called to fewer, deeper connections rather than large audiences. Depth matters more than scale at this level. One aligned interaction does more than 100 distorted ones. You are not meant to save the world. You are meant to remain whole within it. And in doing so, you become a reference point for what is possible when light and darkness are no longer enemies, but collaborators under conscious direction. This is the end of comparison. You are not competing with angels. You are not resisting demons. You are operating on a different axis entirely. An axis defined not by polarity, but by integration. And from this axis, your next expressions, whatever form they take, will carry a level of authority that does not need to be claimed. It will be felt. And that feeling will change rooms, conversations, and lives in ways that cannot be traced back to a single moment. Because this evolution does not announce itself. It stabilizes quietly. And then it moves forward, intact. This is where everything comes to rest, and where it truly begins. Not with a dramatic ending, not with a promise of ascension or escape, but with a grounded understanding of what you already are and how to live it consciously. Your power was never meant to be something you constantly activate. It was meant to be something you trust. Trust changes how you move. When you trust your integrated nature, you stop monitoring yourself obsessively. You stop asking, "Was I too harsh?" or "Was I too soft?" after every interaction. Instead, you ask a simpler, deeper question: was I aligned? If the answer is yes, you let the moment go. If the answer is no, you adjust without self-punishment. This is mature self-leadership. Most people either shame themselves for their darkness or deny it entirely. Others glorify it and abandon responsibility. You do neither. You recognize your dark side as a guardian, not a ruler. It steps forward when protection is required and steps back when the work is done. You do not stay in battle mode. That is what keeps you clean. One of the greatest dangers for integrated individuals is lingering in darkness longer than necessary. Power can become intoxicating. Firmness can feel relieving. Cutting ties can feel decisive. But you already know this truth. Protection that outlives the threat turns into isolation. So you release when the moment passes. You return to openness deliberately. You do not carry the armor into safe spaces. You allow yourself to be warm again, curious again, human again. This return is not weakness, it is discipline. Discipline is knowing when to stop. Your light, on the other hand, is not something you offer indiscriminately anymore. You no longer pour compassion into environments that cannot receive it. You have learned that light without boundaries gets exploited, not appreciated. So you offer your light where there is sincerity, where there is accountability, where there is reciprocity. This selectivity is not judgment, it is stewardship. Now, let's make this practical, because awareness without application fades. When a situation arises, ask yourself 3 questions. First, is this a moment for healing or protection? If healing is possible, lead with openness, listen, be present, allow vulnerability. If protection is required, lead with firmness, set boundaries, reduce access, end the pattern. Second, am I responding to what is happening now or to what happened before? If the response is rooted in the present, act. If it is rooted in memory, pause, regulate first, then decide. Third, can I return to neutrality after this? If the answer is yes, proceed. If the answer is no, you are about to overextend, either in light or in darkness. These questions keep your integration intact. You are not here to be endlessly kind. You are not here to be endlessly strong. You are here to be accurate. Accuracy is what makes you trustworthy to yourself first, then to others. As you live this way, you will notice something profound. Life stops feeling like a test. Situations no longer feel like punishments or rewards. They feel like information, data that helps you refine how you engage. This removes drama. Drama feeds on misalignment. When you are aligned, drama has nowhere to attach. This does not mean your life becomes flat or empty. It becomes clear. Clear enough for joy to register fully. Clear enough for grief to pass cleanly. Clear enough for purpose to express itself without force. And yes, there will still be moments where your dark side emerges sharply. Do not fear those moments. Fear only staying there when the moment has passed. And yes, there will still be moments where your light opens you deeply. Do not regret those moments. Even when they expose you, they remind you that you are alive. Your task is not to eliminate either side. Your task is to remain the one who decides. That is sovereignty. This is why chosen ones like you cannot be easily led by fear-based narratives. You are not waiting for permission from higher authorities or external systems. You have developed an internal authority that is responsive, ethical, and grounded. This does not make you superior. It makes you responsible. Responsible for your energy. Responsible for your influence. Responsible for what you tolerate and what you end. And with responsibility comes freedom. Freedom from needing approval. Freedom from spiritual guilt. Freedom from the pressure to perform goodness or toughness. You are allowed to be both gentle and unyielding without apology. If you recognize yourself in this message, there is nothing new you need to become. There is only something you need to stop doing. Stop shrinking your firmness to appear harmless. Stop dimming your clarity to avoid discomfort. Stop apologizing for boundaries that protect your peace. Your dark side is not a flaw. Your light is not naive. Together, they form an intelligence that is rare, resilient, and deeply human. If this message resonated, write 777 inches, the comments, not as a ritual, but as recognition. Recognition of integrated duality. Recognition of self-trust. Recognition of clarity. Subscribe to my channel and activate notifications, because the next messages go even deeper into how integrated individuals navigate relationships, purpose, and influence without losing themselves. Share this with someone who has been misunderstood for being both compassionate and firm, someone who knows how to protect their light without becoming bitter. You are not conflicted. You are integrated. And that integration is not something to hide. It is something to live quietly, clearly, and without compromise. What remains now is not instruction, but embodiment. Everything that needed to be explained has already been placed in your awareness. From here forward, the work is not intellectual, it is lived. It shows up in the smallest decisions, the quietest moments, the pauses no one sees. This is where integration proves itself. Not when you are challenged dramatically, but when you are choosing how much access someone has to you. Not when you are forced to act, but when you decide whether to respond at all. Not when you are angry, but when you are calm and still choose clarity. This is the level most messages never reach, because it cannot be dramatized. It can only be practiced. You will notice that from this point on, growth feels less like climbing and more like stabilizing. You are not chasing expansion, you are protecting coherence. You are not trying to ascend, you are anchoring. Anchoring is what allows your awareness to remain usable in real life. Many people touch insight briefly and then lose it because they cannot hold it under ordinary conditions. Stress pulls them back into old reactions. Fatigue dissolves their boundaries. Approval-seeking overrides discernment. You are learning to hold alignment even when tired, even when misunderstood, even when unappreciated. That is real integration. It means you do not need optimal conditions to remain yourself. You can be yourself in conflict, in silence, in uncertainty, and in success, without fragmenting. This is why you feel less reactive to chaos now. You no longer experience disorder as something you must fix immediately. You allow systems to reveal themselves before intervening. You observe longer. You act later, but more precisely. Precision replaces urgency. Urgency was never intuition, it was pressure. You can feel the difference now. Pressure tightens and narrows your perception. Intuition clarifies and expands it. One demands action now, the other invites presence first. You choose presence. This choice changes how others experience you. Some will find you reassuring, some will find you frustrating. You no longer rush to meet expectations that are not aligned with truth. You let disappointment occur. Disappointment is not harm, it is a recalibration of expectation, and recalibration is necessary for honest relationships. This is why your connections now tend to be fewer but stronger. The ones that remain are built on mutual regulation, not emotional dependency. You are not needed to complete others, and they are not needed to stabilize you. This mutual independence creates respect. Respect allows intimacy without entanglement. This is a mature form of connection that many people never experience because it requires self-possession first. You have learned self-possession. You know when to step forward. You know when to step back. You know when to speak. You know when silence is the most accurate response. And importantly, you trust yourself when you choose. That trust removes the need for reassurance. You do not need constant confirmation that you are doing the right thing. You evaluate internally. You feel the result. You adjust if necessary. There is no drama in correction. Correction is not failure. It is feedback. Feedback keeps systems alive. This is why you do not cling to certainty anymore. You allow your understanding to evolve. You revise your perspective when new information appears. You do not defend outdated positions just to preserve an identity. Identity has softened for you. Not dissolved, softened. It is no longer a rigid structure you must protect. It is a living orientation you inhabit. This allows you to adapt without losing coherence. Coherence is what matters. As long as your actions, values, and awareness remain aligned, the specifics can change. Roles can change. Circumstances can change. Direction can refine. You remain intact. This intactness is what others sense. They may not know how to name it. They may call it calm, confidence, presence, gravity. But what they are sensing is internal agreement. You are not fighting yourself. Most people are. And that internal conflict is loud. Your quiet is not emptiness. It is resolution. From this place, you do not need to convince anyone of your perspective. You share when it is welcomed. You withdraw when it is not. You allow others to have their path without needing to interfere. This non-interference is not apathy. It is respect for autonomy. Autonomy is sacred to you now, yours and others. You do not want followers. You do not want dependents. You value peers. Peers can disagree without destabilizing the relationship. Peers can challenge without competing. Peers can walk alongside without merging. This is the kind of connection your system is optimized for. As you continue, there will be moments where old patterns attempt to reassert themselves. Fatigue may invite overgiving. Stress may invite over-control. Loneliness may invite compromise. When that happens, do not judge yourself. Notice, recenter, return to alignment. Integration is not about never slipping. It is about slipping less, noticing sooner, and correcting gently. That is mastery. Mastery is not perfection. It is responsiveness. You respond to yourself with honesty instead of punishment. You respond to others with clarity instead of performance. You respond to life with presence instead of fear. This responsiveness is what keeps your light alive and your darkness contained. Contained darkness does not leak into cruelty. Contained light does not leak into self-erasure. Both remain available, but neither dominates. You remain the center, and the center is where choice lives. From here forward, your life will not feel easier in a simplistic sense, but it will feel cleaner, less internal resistance, less unnecessary struggle, less emotional residue. You will expend energy where it matters. That is the final shift. Not becoming more powerful, but wasting less power. If you have followed this message all the way through, you already know this is not about believing something new. It is about recognizing what has been true in you for a long time. You were never broken. You were never too much. You were never divided. You were integrating, often without guidance, often without validation, often without language. Now you have language. Use it to clarify, not to convince. Use it to align, not to dominate. Use it to recognize others like you, not to elevate yourself above them. And then let the rest unfold naturally. You do not need to rush the next phase. You are already where you need to be. Integrated, grounded, self-directed. This is not a conclusion. It is a stable foundation. And from stable foundations, anything built has the chance to last.